This winter, I'm making a series of videos about hats because it's cold, and it really doesn't help that my hair is wet and I'm in my garage, which has no heat. I'm going to walk you through finding your gauge, taking measurements, drafting the pattern. Don't worry, it's just a big rectangle. Knitting the hat and assembling the hat. These instructions will work with any kind of yarn on any flatbed knitting machine. If you're looking for something a little more advanced, check out the playlist in the description for the rest of this series. All right, let's get started. The first step in this process is swatching. We want to use the yarn we're going to use for the hat and cast on enough stitches that we can get like a 2-inch spot in the middle that's not impacted by the way that stockinette curls on the edge. On my bulky, that's about 20 stitches. On a standard gauge, that's going to be 30 or 40 stitches. So we're just going to E-wrap cast on, and I start with a slip knot on the bulky. On everybody. And then put it into the carriage, and I haven't knit with this yarn before, so I'm going to guess at a tension, maybe about 3. And then hang some weights. And then we just knit. Push those back. First stitch didn't knit, but we can fix that. Come on. There we go. Take a look at your fabric and see how dense it is. If you're happy with it, then keep the tension where it is. This is pretty good for me. And then when you've knit, say 5 or 6 inches, you're going to take a transfer tool and add eyelets. So this is tension 3, so I'm going to add 3 eyelets so that I know later what tension I was using. And then knit a few more rows. And then we're just going to cast off. Pull the weight off and pull it up off the machine. Cast off, and we have a swatch. What we want to do is treat the swatch the same way we're going to treat a hat. So this is acrylic and it's going to be machine washed. So I'm just going to run it through the washer and dryer, and the fibers will have time to relax and get into their final state. And I'll probably steam it a bit, and then we can figure out how many rows and how many stitches per inch we have from the swatch. For a hat, you need 2 measurements. You need the circumference of the person's head. We're going to call that about 22 inches, which is about average for an adult human. And then you want to measure from the bottom of one ear over your head to the bottom of the other ear. And for me, that's about 17 inches. The next measurement we need is the gauge. So this is the swatch that I made earlier, and it's a little too dark, so it's hard to see. But I'm just going to count the number of stitches and number of rows in a 2-inch span, and then divide by 2 to find out how many rows and how many stitches per inch. I have this handy little tool, and I'm going to line it up. 1, 2, 3, 10 stitches in 2 inches. So that's going to be 5 stitches per inch. 1, 2, 3, 14 rows in an inch. So that comes out to 7 rows. So that's the gauge that I'm working with. Now we're going to take our other measurements. Let's see, the circumference of my head was 22 inches. Circumference. And then 17 inches over the head. Let's call that ear to ear. So what we're going to do with this is figure out how big a rectangle we need. So a hat is just going to be a big rectangle. And this distance from here to here is going to be the circumference of my head. And this distance from here to here is going to be based on the ear-to-ear measurement. But knits are stretchy, and if we want our hat to fit securely, we want to make it slightly smaller than the size of our head so that it's got some negative ease, and I usually do about 90% of the circumference. So 90% of 22 is, where's my phone? 90% of 22 is about 20 inches. So we'll call this 20 inches. The ear-to-ear measurement is over the head, but the top of this rectangle is going to be the top of the head. So we'll cut that in half. This is going to be 8.5 inches. And then we lose a bit of length in the gathering at the top, so I'm going to add an extra inch to that and call that 9.5. So this is our very basic hat, but it's going to have a bit of a brim. So for our basic hat, we're going to add an extra inch to this so that the brim can roll up and we don't lose any length on the hat. We're going to call it 10.5 inches long. So 20 inches wide in my gauge is going to be, that's 100 stitches. And then 10.5 inches long times 7 rows per inch. That's going to be 73.5. We'll call that 74. So to make this very basic hat, we need to cast on 100 stitches, knit 74 rows, and then bind off. And that's it. That's our basic hat. So I'm casting on 100 stitches. This is just an E-wrap. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. Make sure to hang some weights. And then I'm going to double check the eyelets on my swatch. This was at tension 3. Reset the row counter to 0. Mine is currently disassembled. Don't worry about it. And then we're just going to knit. The sides will start to pull in as you knit, so hang a claw weight right on the edge. When you get to the end, leave a long tail, at least as long as your work, and then thread the end onto a double-eyed tool. We're going to pull the live stitches off the bed onto the double-eyed tool and then onto the long tail of the yarn. This creates like a drawstring, so we can pull the crown in tight later. Pull the weights off as you go. Here's our hat. Pull on the tail to gather up the stitches. Switch to a tapestry needle and thread the end of the yarn through the other side of the hat to secure the edges together. Then pull on the thread more to gather up the crown. Place a few stitches through the gathering to tighten up and secure the crown. Then we're going to mattress stitch this seam. This is easier to do if you turn the hat inside out. When you're about an inch from the bottom, pull the yarn through to the other side and make the seam on the outside. This makes it less visible when the brim rolls up. Here's my hat, washed and blocked. This is a lovely fit, and I think the rolled brim is a nice touch. This is a great project to help you get comfortable with a new machine. Hats make great holiday gifts, and there are a lot of charities that ask for hats this time of year, so consider making some to donate. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Check out the playlist in the description for the rest of this series, and subscribe for more machine knitting fun. Happy knitting! Try a couple different poses, so I'm gonna look over this way. Look over this way.